introduce you to Professor Othman, who will be presenting this webinar on AI. So, Othman, could you say some words about your experience and what you've been doing at NEOMA?
Great. Thank you, Olivier. Hello, everybody. So happy to be with you today for this webinar. So I'm Othman BOUJENA. I'm associate professor at NEOMA Business School. Let's say I'm sort of passionate or enthusiastic about all what's related to technology, so big data, artificial intelligence, but also with its impact on customer relationship management. But I'm also realistic about the impact of technology. We'll come back to some points later. I'm teaching at the GEMBA mainly and other programs at NEOMA. And I have many ongoing research projects related to customer centricity and other technological dynamics with many universities in USA, but also in France.
Thank you, Othman. We're looking forward to hearing from your presentation in a few minutes. But first of all, let me introduce you to NEOMA. Maybe for those of you who don't know NEOMA Business School, with one of the best business schools in the world for more than 150 years of excellence. As you may know, NEOMA was born in 2013 from the merger of two major schools in France, Reims Manager School and Rouen Business School. It's actually the second oldest business school in France with almost 60,000 alumni, one of the biggest network in Europe. So it's very critical when you join such a business school to enter a family, I would say. And also as far as the EMBA program is concerned, more than 40 years of history in delivering MBA degrees and more than 20 years in executive MBA delivery. Well, as far as the Global Executive MBA program is concerned, well, it's we have tried to focus on the main, I would say in marketing you say USP, unique selling points, but really the main advantages and key points of this program. And number one is a multidisciplinary high-level management training program targeting very high-level people, senior managers who would like to jump, to have some progress in their company and to reach a top level in the company. Number two, this program is really a transformational journey. It's the duration of the program is 15 months and is really a way for you to transform yourself, to learn a lot, of course, and also to develop your personal development skills, your soft skills, and also your hard skills like finance, management, and strategy, just to mention these topics. This program tackles key societal changes and is very critical. We have been awarded some prizes as far as corporate social responsibility is concerned. So the main part of the program is dedicated to sustainability and CSR. As I said, a unique personal development approach with coaching, with resilient leadership, specific seminars on this topic, and last but not least, a true global experience, as we do offer some international learning experience in different countries in the world, as well as a local anchoring, because we do offer as well seminars in Reims and Rouen, who, as I said, are our main historical campuses as part of the NEOMA story. Just before leaving you, Othman, just to present your today's subject, as a snapshot of the Global EMBA in a nutshell. So it's totally delivered in English. Main duration is 15 months with three entry dates: June, October, and February. So the very next intake is in next October this year, with 4 main campuses in Paris, of course, but also Reims, Rouen, and Tehran, in Iran, where we do have a cohort with a local partner. Of course, we have a very prestigious professor like Othman today, but many others coming from different countries in the world, not only from NEOMA faculty, but also from other faculty from partnering universities. As I said, we have international learning experience in New York City, but also in Africa, dedicated on entrepreneurship in emerging markets. Which is very important when you are willing to start an EMBA, is to look at the rankings. So we are ranked in the very famous Financial Times ranking worldwide, ranked 76. And last but not least, we are NEOMA Business School is triple accredited. So you may know that less than 2% of the business school worldwide are triple accredited with ACSB, AMBA, and EQUIS. Well, that's it for the EMBA. So I will have an additional few words at the very end of the today's webinar, and of course, I would be more than happy to answer your questions related to the program. But I'm sure you will have also a lot of questions to ask to Othman. So. Just a few words to introduce Othman regarding artificial intelligence. You know, that has gone beyond science fiction in recent years. But the question is, what are the main changes, the main change dynamics? Another question is how do we leverage technologies and reshape decision making to have the greatest impact on customers? Our today's speaker, Professor Othman BOUJENA, will put you through the main implications of AI for today's management. I hope you will enjoy it. So Othman, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Olivier, and welcome again to all our participants from all over the world. So very happy to have you with us for this webinar today on this very hot topic related to AI and disruption in digital age. So I will start with an introduction, of course. So we cannot ignore the context we are experiencing, and I hope it will get better later. But anyway, in terms of what we call digital transformation, we can say that the COVID period has been a sort of motivation factor or accelerator of digital adoption. It was like a constrained digital transformation for many companies, given the nature of the containment and the changing context for many companies. So, of course, this context contributed a lot to the adoption and usage of many technological devices. Let's have a focus also rapidly in this introduction to what changes exactly did we have in terms of usage of what we can call emerging tech. So as I told you, this COVID period led many companies and brands in different sectors to adopt, to embrace technology, sometimes to maintain their activities, to improve, to redesign, re-engineer their customer experience. So in many contexts, so we have witnessed many changes, first in terms of remote working and the changes it had on different phases of the job, but also the way e-commerce and some retailers tried to use technology with a sort of contactless shopper experience, using the multi-channel approach and leveraging technology to allow a minimum contact with customers, but also protecting their employees in this new context. Many questions also and concerns related to cyber security, because we have been witnessing many operations going through digital. So it is raising more questions about cybersecurity and protecting data. I will come back to this point later. SODAR, for example, which is one of the latest innovations of Google in terms of monitoring the social distancing by sending some notifications to individuals who would like to be in line with this standards. So different domains anyway, where emerging technologies have been adopted and used by companies and brands and individuals also, given this new context. Now, in this changing environment, which has been the case also before the starting of the COVID, but it is more intensified with the present context and the uncertain future, we can come back to the famous approach or model about what we call VUCA. It's about volatility, uncertainty, complexity and ambiguity, and it's really some critical questions that many leaders and companies and brands should really answer and address in this specific tough time, by trying to bring answers, to propose also a sort of adaptation and agility. Facing the volatility, companies should have, and as an answer, a clear vision. It means how they can really reach their objectives given the present context. Facing the uncertainty, the idea is to work more on understanding your context, understanding the changing behaviors of your customers in this period, and also the coming period, which we call sometimes the new normal, and also your employees. So to do that, you should come back to data and your knowledge. So knowledge will be very important to bring a solution facing this uncertainty by increasing your understanding capabilities as an organization. And then we have complexity. So facing complexity, we need clarity from leaders. We need clarity approaches from companies to be really very clear and pedagogical about the way they would like to focus on some critical aspects to be in line with the ongoing changes in, again, this very difficult period. And finally, it's about ambiguity. And the idea is to come back to the famous agility principle, which is very important. It's the degree to which you can show a minimum of flexibility in the way you can behave and lead your company in this very changing and hard period. So let's go to the second step, which is about discovering or going in depth in terms of emerging technologies. What type of technologies are we, emerging ones especially, are we facing today? Based on one of the recent reports from PwC, we can talk about what they call essential emerging technologies, and there are 8. So you see here AI is the first one, of course, which will be one of the focus of this presentation. Augmented reality, which is changing a lot and adopted more and more by companies in terms of improving customer experience. We know also that many of the GAFAs are investing to have AR integrated systematically in their devices, especially in a time frame of 2 years. The blockchain also used also in many contexts, including the loyalty programs, for example, drones, which has been used also for in this context of COVID, Internet of Things, robotics, which is used more and more in many touch points by the brands. So we'll come back to this point later. Virtual reality and 3D printing used in many industrial or designing domains. So we have a lot of emerging technologies. Choices in terms of embracing these technologies are not the same according to companies. Their constraints, the type of sector they are working in. But anyway, this move or this shift around these new technologies are opening new perspectives, but also new stakes in the way we can adopt, integrate, and make them in line with the organizational processes. let's have a focus on AI. What is happening concerning the AI landscape? And we can here notice in this figure different degrees, if you want, between the mass adoption, which is more related to the famous chatbots used today by a lot of companies in monitoring, again, the service or the customer interaction. But going until things that are more advanced, like Watson Analytics from IBM or Einstein Solutions from Salesforce.com, for example, where we have more predictive capabilities about the sales funnel, for example, about monitoring your reputation through social analytics, making predictions in terms of some customer segments response function. So we can have more advanced functions here. And of course, again, the sophistication is growing every day because we are about technology. And as you know, it is developing every day. So including for natural language processing or programs, we have every day more developments in capturing new advances from technology. So we have here some examples through, of course, Alexa, Siri, and Tesla for autonomous vehicles. Given the nature of opportunities and capabilities AI is offering for companies, we can say that it is really used by many companies today as something to leverage the competitive advantage. At least this is the result from one of the recent studies led by Forbes, saying that 84% of companies say that they rely on AI to get competitive advantage. So of course, we have also the underlying idea of time. Who should be the first to market? So this is very important. The competitive advantage will be based not only about adopting a technology, but how you will be one of the first to make benefit of this usage and also make it profitable for your customers or your business partners at the same time. Okay, let's move now to the third part about transformation and disruption. This evolution around technologies, of course, and emerging ones, at least the 8 technologies that I have mentioned just before, of course, this evolution is opening new perspectives and is also making companies more involved in a transformation and maybe also disruption context. So let's see, of course, the starting or the development or evolution we had at this stage. If we come back to what we call the digital laws, we can notice here that we started around the 70s with the first critical technological changes related mainly to transistors. And it was concerning companies like IBM and HP, which were companies that manages really to be distinguished on their markets by having these servers that were able to compute and complete transactions faster with customers. So that was around the 70s. And then we moved to a new context with something else related to technology, which was making the difference or the differentiation for companies. It was around the 90s and related to the network volume and the degree to which you own the network. So this led us directly to the GAFAs like Google, Amazon, Netflix, Facebook, which managed to succeed in their market because they were distinguished with this owning of their networks. And then we moved to more recently to what we call Watson Law. So the idea was not only about owning technology or advanced technology, but how you can use this technology to leverage your knowledge and master the data management process. And that was the case for some companies that tried actually, or at this present time, to more foster knowledge and mastering their market and what customers are doing through the usage of the data they have or they come from technologies. This leads us to the latest or most recent law, which is the MARTEC law. And here we can have two contrasts: time of adoption versus the change. And as you know, of course, the technological changes are evolving according to an exponential law or rhythm versus the change within organization, which is following more a sort of logarithmic rhythm or speed. So the speed is not the same, and the time is very important in such changing environment. So maybe the gray side that you see here in the figure will be related to your capability or capacity as organizations to lead the transformation or maybe the disruption if you are really about a disrupted business model. So this gap is referring to the degree to which organizations, brands, or companies in general manage to deal with this discrepancy between the fast development of technologies versus their present situation and resources and organizational factors that will allow these companies maybe to be in line with this changing environment. So many questions around digital transformation. We are using a lot this word, maybe sometimes with many misconceptions. Before going to other details, we should know that digital transformation is about managing a change in society in general, but also in companies. So it's not just about having a new channel or opening an online website. It's more holistic than that, and it is involving people, organization, and processes. So that's why it's about a process. We have a time frame, and we have an evolving dynamic around the embracing digital transformation, adopting. So this is what we call the technology in usage, until you can reach some maturity levels, which could really reflect the degree to which the companies manage to diffuse and to absorb the changes led or generated by technology. I tried here in this figure to summarize. So I examined many situations for different companies, and I tried here to summarize what are the different scenarios that we can have in the way companies are reacting to technology. So we can start with the first scenario, which is what I call the cosmetic approach. This is the case for many brands or companies which are on a sort of approach of technology, which is the nice to have. So technology is something new, or at least developing every day. So it's nice to have it. So it's more about aesthetic or cosmetic approach of technology without especially a deep understanding and also reflection and strategy around embracing this technological change. So that's the first stage, if you want, or the initial stage for this continuum. The second approach is saying, okay, technology is the standard today. We should have it. We must have it because our competitors are using this technology. So it's important for the competitive advantage. It's important to be in line with some standards. And here we are more about sort of aligning approach. So you are embracing technology or adopting technology to be in line. So for you, it's a matter of being compliant or in compliance or in line with some standards. The third stage, which I called productivist approach. This is like one of the basics when we started talking about information technology some years ago, where the approach of technology is only restricted and reduced to the efficiency and effectiveness benefits of technology. It means doing things faster and with less cost. This is true with many technologies, of course, but we cannot reduce technology only to this productivist approach, because it is involving more than that. So, but you have many, especially in industrial domains, where the approach of technology was more based on this thinking. Finally, we can talk about more transformational approach, which for me is more the holistic, transverse approach of adopting technology, and which should be the case normally for many companies, because digital transformation is involving people first, organization processes, your business model, and many aspects, more than the way you create value, more than focusing only on the three first elements. So this is what I called the capped approach, which is about cosmetic, aligning, productivist, and transformational. You can see it as a continuum also. Some companies started in cosmetic, maybe they will evolve, and some of them will stay there because this is the approach, this is the way they see technology, or they experience embracing technology. Now, going in depth in terms of digital transformation, as I told you, it's more about holistic change, which is involving many aspects. One of the reports from MIT and Deloitte is mentioning three main pillars, which I find very interesting. The first, I will start by leadership. Leadership has a very important role. Leaders have a very important role in facilitating, in giving the vision, in giving the intelligibility of the digital transformation project. And this is very important starting point. In terms of succeeding in digital transformation, it's more a top-bottom, top-down approach, not bottom-up approach. It could be bottom up for other type of processes, but for initiating the project and succeeding, the role of leadership is very important in giving the vision, clarifying the objectives, giving the resources to be aligned with this ongoing process of embracing digital transformation. And then we have the culture, the corporate culture, which is very important. It's never late to make a shift in terms of culture. Some companies had different culture before, and given the digital context, were obliged to change. This is something very possible, of course. It is based on the values that make a lot of people around you inside the organization having the same vision and understanding where are we going and why. Answering the why question is very important when you are about leading digital transformation. When you have no answer for that, it will be quite difficult to engage people, your employees, and again, your customers after for succeeding in this policy. And finally, the strategy. So the strategy is very important. So how you set your objectives and how you are able to reach them by embracing or integrating the digital characteristics or benefits. This is the third level that we can identify here. If we want to focus more on this cultural shift, it is very important, because one of the main misconceptions or mistakes, I would say, around digital transformation is the fact that we focus a lot on technology. You can have the best technological software, but if you are not leading in the right way what is happening around, it will be really difficult to succeed in this domain. So if we make a comparison here between the traditional practices that were used by companies before and those that emerged with the digital context and the context of digital transformation, we can summarize them on three main levels. The time perspective, doing things, having a rapid and speed response function from companies, including in terms of decision making, which is sometimes very hard to manage, because sometimes you need to take time to think and to have a wise approach, including of your data. But you should also bring a rapid answer to this rapidly evolving context. So it's not easy to have a trade-off in terms of this time perspective, which is critical when you are about digital transformation. Agility, as I was saying when commenting the VUCA approach, will be one of the main, I should say, organizational talent of your organization or company, to be in line and to be flexible and adaptive in this changing environment. And finally, data. You should move more to a fact-based decision making. So using the data that this technological transformation is bringing through different channels, especially if you are on the multi-channel architecture. Let's see some main issues related to this change again, because as I said before, digital transformation is about change management. And one of the main things, as we see here, it's not directly related to technology, which is considered by many people as the focus point of digital transformation. It's more about how you adapt, how you make the engineering of the structure of your company to embrace this change. Concretely, you should, for example, destroy the silos, or you should at least remove the silos that you may have between different functions. If you want really to be customer-centric, if you want really to put the customer at the center, which is one of the natural consequences that may come after the digital transformation, you should more work on collaborative approach, sharing knowledge and data about your market and customers. So it means less frontiers between your departments inside the company. How to work on the greater alignment between business and IT. IT department or function or information system one will have a very important role. So how you articulate the interactions between this department, which is directly involved in this technological change, versus the functional departments, which could have maybe other standards and other approach about what is happening inside the organization. And also we have something related to how you reorganize or reshape the roles of people. So should you have a CDO, or we can have different namings within the companies, who will be in charge of leading, of monitoring this change within your organization. So you see that many challenges are more related to organization, re-engineering processes, the way decisions are made, and technology is more in the background. But after all this, leadership, culture, organization, technologies, digital transformation is first about people. If it's not people-centric, if it's not human-centric, it will be, again, very problematic for the success of your digital transformation process. And that's why here we have many contributions focusing on the importance of your employees, on the human aspect, because humans will make this technology life within your company, will use what is coming from these technological aspects and integrate that in their decision making, in the way they lead their different functions in top management, middle, but also operational level. So it's very important to make digital transformation around. The starting point is human and the arrival point should be human. And you see here, if we come back to the recent report from the WEF about the skills that are emerging or growing in according to the coming years, you see a lot of skills or talents related to how you can behave in this changing environment, like analytical thinking, creativity, for example, technology design and programming, complex problem solving. Technology is helping a lot in solving problems, but we can have new challenges in the way we approach problems, how we can have visibility through this complexity of channels, and also the huge amount of data that we have. So we are more needing people with emotional intelligence, with reasoning, ideation. So you see a lot of talents and skills here that will be very important in the coming years related to what we have covered as changes. Now, going progressively to the idea of disruption. Here I mentioned one of the citations from Linus Pauling, who is a Nobel Prize winner working in chemistry. So the way to get good ideas is to get a lot of ideas and throw the bad ones away. So the creative process is very important. Technology shouldn't be something that where you are going to rely on technology even for creativity. Human creativity is very important, and the idea is to be in synergy with what technology allows. So of course you should go through a creative process in order to pick up maybe some nice ideas through this general process. Disruption versus innovation, it's not the same thing. When you come just with something new, or something that you are doing better than in the past, you are more about innovation. But if you want to move or talking about disruption means that you come with something new, but which make the past or the way it was done in the past really obsolete. So when we talk about disruption, it could be one of the consequences, of course, of digital transformation, but you go until the stage of re-engineering your business model and also the way you create value for your customers. Then you start be in disruption. So of course here you have some classical examples that you already know, like Airbnb, like Uber, like Facebook, Alibaba, or Netflix. So all these new disruptive business model managed to have a different approach, which is really a sort of disruption even in the way you create value for your customers. One of the basic examples to illustrate this idea is to see what happened between Netflix and Blockbuster. If you see in USA especially, so Blockbuster was obliged to stop their activity in 2013, and one of the main reasons was related to how to embrace this change and how Netflix managed with its approach, disruptive approach, to be really distinguished and also having a competitive advantage, which was unfortunately like a negative or disaster for Blockbuster. We can make a contrast between two aspects related to the way they design customer experience based on disruption for Netflix and based on the old way of doing things. And you see here where time-consuming store visits, it was the case for customers before, you have an instant access from home for Netflix. So anyway, any device, so very important. When we have some late fees with Blockbuster, so with Netflix only subscription fees and then unlimited rentals. So many changes. That's why I was talking about re-engineering your business model and coming with new ways of creating value for your customers. This is what makes the difference between Netflix and Blockbuster at this stage. Now, these digital capabilities fostered and allowed by technologies, different ones that we have covered before, you should find a sort of trade-off between what digital capabilities possible in your context and what customers are expecting or willing. And then you find a sort of common space where you are able to create and to focus on your customers. So by creating value and being, if possible, customer-centric. We know we don't have a lot of really customer-centric companies in the world, but we have some good examples like Netflix, like Amazon, like Spotify. Here you see how they manage to go in depth in terms of listener data to try to connect people based on their music preferences. And here you have a sort of display used by Spotify to connect people thanks to the usage of data. Again, we are in a knowledge economy. We are in a data-based economy. So using customer data is one of the keys to be data-centric and then by consequence, customer-centric. So let's move now to the decision-making process. A lot of complexity, a lot of capabilities and opportunities also related to this digital transformation. But of course, this digital transformation is bringing or AI and other technologies are bringing a sort of new levers, but also some complexity in the way you can make your decision. How are you going to integrate? So as you see here, data is or are evolving very, very fast. You see here the amount of exchanges, emails, posts in different platforms, just to focus on this type of digital tools or from social media. So how to do with that? I mean, your customers may exist, of course, offline and also online. How to handle this complexity, this multiplication of data sources, especially if you are in a multi-channel approach. So how can you reach the famous wisdom by using different data coming, how to have the great picture about your customers and having what we call the 360-degree vision of your customers. Talking about that, so we then can mention the famous big data, of course, which is directly related to this huge amount of data we have more and more. We started many years now ago by the famous 3 V's about volume, variety, and velocity. Then we added others like veracity and also value of the data, degree to which it can really bring something to your decision-making process. And we ended up with 8 V's covering things like visualization, which is very important today for making decision, especially that, as you know, those who are sometimes going in depth or processing data are not especially those who will be making the decision. So the format under which you will present the outputs from data is very important to make them intelligible, to make them acceptable at the cognitive level for decision making. So we got a lot of development around data visualization tools, but also data design or even data artists in some companies trying today to focus on the form of data. Virality and viscosity also. Virality is more about sharing what comes from data on other platforms, for example. So how to keep in mind your priority in terms of monitoring the CX, the customer experience, facing this complexity of data and your internal objectives. And this is one of the critical points at this stage. So here I share with you something about what we call information value chain. What are the different steps through which data are coming or are evolving until reaching the final stage, which is wisdom. Wisdom is more related to action, to decision making, from a raw approach or raw state of your data, starting to identify some insights, then starting to construct or build your knowledge by connecting some elements based on analytical or analytics, and then getting insights, and finally finding the patterns related to segmentation, to what are the levers for sales success, identifying personas today that we use in segmentation, also many different situations, especially in marketing. But then approaching this data and this analytical aspects, then and moving from analytical stage to decision-making stage is again referring to the skills and how sharing of information is evolving inside the company. And here we have something interesting about, can I have a one-handed analyst? So something you need to make some judgment, to some trade-offs according to the insights you got from data. So how to approach, what are the main critical aspects or misconceptions or things that you should pay attention to when you approach data coming from machine learning, from AI, from all these technologies to make a decision in the present context? I tried here to focus on some of the main important domains or aspects. First, some misconceptions or biases that we can have in terms of sampling and also the way you collect data. Sometimes the sampling itself is not really correct from the statistical point of view, and you are basing then your decisions on a biased sample, or the way you collect data among your customers, for example, or your salespeople is not totally correct, or is introducing a sort of bias. So this is one of the main points where you can have some misconceptions impacting the quality of the decisions you can make, of course. Inadequate predictions. So sometimes you can make some extrapolations. This is one of the main mistakes with big data, is that you try sometimes to make big data deciding for you as managers, which is not the right approach. It should bring a sort of insight, but we need still the human intelligence to deal with what is coming from data, of course. Focusing on some patterns. Sometimes you can lack some holistic approach of your data, and you focus only on some patterns. For example, when you compare how people are buying online with the tracking of their activity on your website, and then you try to make rapid conclusions about what is impacting what, because you have an hypothesis before, and you have a sort of oriented approach of your data. And this is also a sort of source of bias when you are dealing with this type of information. Causality approach. One of the main mistakes is that we make a confusion sometimes between what is correlation versus what can be a causality. So having events or having variables evolving together, for example, having a sort of sales growth in a specific period could be related to some contextual aspects, so you cannot extrapolate. So correlation is not causality. A impacting B is not the same thing as having two different phenomena evolving at the same time. And this is one of the main mistakes. Variance source and attribution. This is just to say, for example, you see that many customers are coming to your store. So to what type of levers or actions can you attribute this increase in terms of visit frequency? So you should go through experimentation to really isolate and to be sure that people are coming because they have been exposed to a campaign, for example, that you sent to them by email. Otherwise, you don't have any scientific justification of making a connection between some direct marketing operations and what could happen in your stores, for example, or in online platforms. Systematization is the last maybe critical point, is that with big data, the idea is not to be always in certainty. You should ask, you should question many aspects in the way you approach big data, and it's very dangerous, sometimes leading to some discrimination, to have a sort of systematization of knowledge that you can get from big data. How to move from data to empathy? It is possible, and it's the case for Netflix, as you know, which manages to really reach high levels of personalization of their customer experience through the usage of big data, even using big data for designing some their own shows or movies like House of Cards or other type of movies that have been directly generated from the usage of data. And we can also mention the example from KLM and their operation using Twitter, which has been around the hashtag happy to help. And the idea was to bring a very nice empathy and answers to their passengers and customers, but passengers from any other airline company in some critical moments that we can mention as the moments of truth in a customer relationship. The next topic is naturally CX. So we moved from CRM, customer relationship management, to customer experience management. But more than just managing experience today, the challenge is more about how you design experience today. Of course, we see that the the market around customer experience management is really growing. We have a nice growth coming for until 2024. So companies are investing more and more in solutions related to monitoring or managing the customer experience. But we have a real challenge in terms of design. It means how you can have a surgical approach of touch points and analyze based on empathy approach the way your customers will behave on your different channels or brand touch points according to what technology allows in terms of improving the customer experience. And here at this specific level, using design thinking, for example, approaches with ideation and empathy approach can help you. This is one of the, I mean, the case was for recently for initiatives from Zalando, for example, which worked a lot on personalizing the customer experience, including the online interface with specific content and with some fashion advices for their customers based on this very transformational and design-based approach of CX. Another critical point which is raised when we talk about CX in relation with AI and especially robotics that we have seen as one of the emerging technologies today, robots can bring something new in the way you manage the interaction with your customers. However, you should really think deeply about the trade-off between human intervention or monitoring by your employees, by all the people working with your customers, versus using robotics, chatbots, or humanoids, as we call them. So at the emotional level, and we know that emotions are at the center of customer experience, you should pay attention because your customers as individuals, as human beings, and your employees also can feel emotions, which is not the case for robots. Robots can detect, based on facial recognition and things like that, can detect emotions but cannot feel emotions. So the idea is to think about the focus on services. How with robotics and chatbots and all these aspects, are you really working or taking into account what we call the anthropomorphic face of your brand? This is the degree to which your brand can really keep a human face in the way it interacts with customers. First, through your salespeople, employees, and second, through making AI and other robots and these things having a sort of human and empathetic approach in the way they bring answers, they help, they can bring value in your customer interaction or CX. So this is very important point between being just obsessed by robotic itself and integrating robotics in a huge or holistic approach of designing your CX to have better impact, because your customers are still and will still expect a human approach from you as a brand or company. The question that we may ask here, is it really worth to invest in CX? The answer is yes, at least, of course, based on one of these reports, but we have many other studies mentioning the impact on your net promoter score, on loyalty. You see here, the more you are considered as a very good brand or company in terms of CX, the more the customers will be willing to buy more products from you, the more they will be resisting to competitors. So it is having a direct impact on loyalty. It is also decreasing the costs for managing customer complaints. The more you invest in CX, the less you will have to spend money on managing or handling complaints from customers. And finally, a recommendation also is one of the return on investment indicators that you may use in addition to NPS or conversion rates, for example, related to CX. Okay, technology is nice, many opportunities, challenges in terms of decision making, but let's finish with a very critical and important question, which is related to AI and humanity, or AI and the impact on business also, we have many ethics issues and also fairness issues and transparency issues related to the usage of AI. We have some very recent examples. Maybe you have seen the case of Alexa and some children in US that managed to spend more than $400 with Alexa buying some toys. So when the parents came back, they found a huge amount of toys purchased by their kids where they were alone at home with Alexa. So this is typically one of the ethical questions. The problem that we had with Marriott recently, and it was not the first time that Marriott had a problem with the data breach. So it is raising the problem of cybersecurity and owning your data and protecting your data, including some privacy issues like what we had also with the problem that EasyJet had to face recently in relation with that. So consumer privacy is a real challenge today. You need more than ever in the way you manage the relationship with your customer to establish, to set trust. We have also this discussion recently related to many applications related to COVID and how many citizens are not really or are quite reluctant to adopt this type of applications, for example. It's the case also in the way you manage relations with your customers. And here we have an abstract from a study saying, especially in retail, among retail executives, saying that one of the reasons for designing and implementing consumer privacy strategy is sometimes the lack of fundings, but also government regulations. We have the GDPR in European Union, but it's not the case elsewhere in the world. Sometimes inadequate data management within the organization. So many challenges also related to considering consumer privacy, but also implementing or integrating this aspect to your whole strategy in order to build trust with your partners and your customers, which are concerned directly. We can have this contribution from Ethos from 2019, which is interesting because it is underlying maybe one of the most interesting questions. It's to make a difference between what I call generally what technology can do versus what technology should do. And here we need human beings in general, and we need managers in the domain of business and managers to really be clear about the frontiers. We are not obliged to open all the perspectives according to what technology is doing, because we need to protect privacy. We need to have some ethical standards. And even for managing the relationship with your customers, you have some red lines. And if you move to intrusion, you will generate a counter effects and destroy value in the way you manage a relationship with your customers. So law will be about what is forbidden to do. Ethics, it's the human question from us as human beings to say what should be done. And finally, technology is opening, is evolving, but we should keep control on these developments. And this is one of the main philosophies related to the European Union guidelines, which are related to how to make AI controlled by humanity, sustainable also, because we have some green issues, especially if we think about the data centers, which are not always in line with some green standards and protecting the planet. User privacy, protecting diversity. So AI shouldn't be a way to increase discrimination in general, even in the way you approach your customers, but also citizens and individuals in society in general. How to have a safe control and be responsible, accountable in the usage of AI. And finally, I come back again to AI should empower humans, but humans should control AI. This is one of our roles as human beings at this level. So I would conclude with this citation, saying this is one of the main principles I like to say each time. It's we should, in matter of technology, we should keep in mind the essence of technology and connect it to the sense. And here again, we have a role as human beings to bring to make these two domains connected together. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Othman. Very interesting, very fascinating. Well, we have several questions raised by our participants. Maybe let me ask the first question asked by Romain Ries. How do you think digital and consumer centricity could disrupt the pharmaceutical industry? And could it be done in a profitable way?
Good question. So first, when we talk about pharmaceutical industry, so it's more about patient-centric, and it was really a sort of shift in terms of the culture of the pharmaceutical industry, because as you know, this specific sector has been for a long time based on or given more priority to scientific approach and talking more to specialists and doctors and scientists, and less taken into account the patient, which is like the final customer, but I prefer to use the word patient for this domain. So we started having some initiative from some industries thinking about not just the protocol or how you can design some drugs or some solutions for some illnesses, but to think about how it will be experienced by the patients when they will be taking these products. So of course the answer is yes, we can have a patient-centric. It's one of the priorities now in this sector to think about that, especially after the COVID domain. As you see, health domain and using AI and big data in this domain will be one of the critical domains where many countries should make efforts, including companies in the pharmaceutical sector. And it could be directly related to the way you approach big data. So for example, we already have through Watson, IBM managed to help some health institutions, for example, to have platforms where doctors are sharing experience, doctors from all over the world are sharing experiences about the response functions of some patients after using specific quantities of specific drugs or products. So sharing experience about that, also having some feedbacks from patients through some experiments or surveys is a way of increasing the patient-centric philosophy, taking into account some sensorial and the critical aspects in the product itself and how it could be used by patient is also a way of reflecting and working on this patient centricity.
Okay, thank you very much, Othman. Any other question from the participants? Feel free to use the chat box to ask your question. No. A quick look at the chat box, but obviously you have been very clear. I think you raised your attention and answered all the questions our dear participant may have had today. So just a few seconds to try to figure out if there are any other questions. It was very clear. Mohamed said, yeah, Romain as well. Okay. Any other suggestion you may have, Othman, regarding other industry channels? You just spoken about pharmaceutical industry, but regarding other industry channels like automotive or consumer products, or do you have any tips or advices in terms of AI?
Maybe we can come back to one of the critical points which we see a lot in articles today and discussions and also webinars related to the famous move to the new normal. So a lot of questions are raised around how things will be in the future. It's very hard to have a clear answer today because it's moving, and we know also that in terms of memory, we can have maybe coming back to some previous ways of behaving even among customers. However, of course, the economic environment is changing. It will be quite hard for the coming context. And of course, it is raising the question for brands how to face this changing environment. I made recently a contribution about a model that I called Scapes. So how some brands with the hashtag Scapes approach, how some brands can really bring and communicate with their customers during this hard period. I think we expect some empathy. We expect some expertise from brands to understand the present environment with customers, but also trying to innovate in the way they can really bring value and animate the experience. Concerning the, for example, cars industry, we see through the example of Renault that, I mean, we had a sort of strategic problem. So coming back to more citizen and small cars will be more in line with the future demand. So things are changing in many, of course, sectors. In relation also with how we deal with transparency, I think that one of the main consequences of this context is it will be a willingness or expectation from customers to have more and more clear feedback and be more transparent with their customers about many aspects. So we see many dynamics in the consumer goods industry, as you mentioned. If we see some smartphone applications trying to give information to customers about the components of many food products, for example, and this is based on algorithms and AI also. So many levels of change or change dynamics in different sectors indeed related to this specific context. I don't hear you, Olivier.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
I unmuted my microphone. Well, so two very last questions because we will be running out of time. So if you can answer very briefly to this question, can you differentiate between AI and machine learning? And how can AI help in e-commerce industry?
In what? Which
e-commerce industry.
E-commerce industry, okay. So AI, I mean, artificial intelligence, I didn't focus on the word itself because the word itself is not totally agreed by a lot of people, including in the research domain. Some people prefer to talk about augmented intelligence or numerical intelligence instead of artificial intelligence, because they are defending the fact that it could never, or it will never replace the human intelligence, which is true in many cases, of course. So you should know that sometimes we prefer to talk about augmented or numerical intelligence instead of artificial intelligence. But anyway, machine learning is the process related to AI, which is about making machines learning through repetitive processes, automated processes, to recognize through pictures, for example, if we talk about face recognition or pictures or even on text. So this process through which the learning of machines, of robots, of automated devices will learn to identify, to store, to organize knowledge, but machine knowledge is referring to machine learning. So we have also neural networks, but I don't know if we should go in the details, but this is more inspired about having an imitation about how our brain is functioning to translate that into the machine context. Coming back to the second question, AI in e-commerce. So we see very nice initiatives already in Amazon or Netflix, as I told you. So AI is helping, for example, if we talk about the recommendation algorithms. So on Amazon, for example, when you buy a book or something else, you have sometimes many recommendations saying that other people that, for example, checked this book or purchased this book also were interested with this type of book. So these recommendation engines are based on AI, for example. It could be used also for tracking the activity of your customers on your website. This is what is typically used by Netflix, where they track, in fact, what people are doing, so they can make some inferences about what they prefer and what could be in line with their preferences as a visual contact, movies or shows or things like that. So AI is bringing for e-commerce more capabilities in terms of tracking, of course, in line with what the law is allowing as usage of data, and also bringing advice to your customers, as I told you with the example of Zalando. So they try to analyze data and then to identify sort of segments or persona in terms of fashion approaches. So how people have different tastes in terms of clothing, for example, and they come back to you with a personalized interface. So when you go on Zalando, you have a personalized land page, for example, with specific advices and products that are in line with what have been identified as something that you like or you prefer.
Okay, we have many questions. So just for your information,
Great, we managed to inspire.
Yeah. So it's very inspiring. Thank you very much, Othman. So we will make our best to finish before 5:30, because it will be the last question we will address. So 3 other questions we have from Tanya. Can technology AI play an important role to counter the economic slowdown we will see in the future?
Yes, it will, because it is supposed to, at least like what we have seen in the, I mean, maybe the second slide, so about even for the COVID. So using the data, as I told you, to face the uncertainty related to this context, you should come back to knowledge. And if you want to master your environment, there is no other solution apart from coming back to data about your customers, your markets, trends, maybe benchmark about what your competitors are doing, new sociological trends, if you want to follow consumptions changes maybe. So AI, again, through the usage and machine learning, through the exploitation of big data or data if you are not directly in an environment of big or huge amount of data, will be one of the critical roles. So the degree to which you can deep into this data and bring meaning and bring sense in order to know how to react and how to make your decision in this context will be really critical. And I think that companies and sectors that will be able to understand and capture the insights from the ongoing environment will be facing less problems. It will be problematic for I mean, different industries, of course, because we are in very specific and hard period, but doing something by coming back to data versus not using these assets, because today data is really an asset for companies, it's not just a source of information, will be really differentiating in the way you can face what is coming as changes after this period.
Perfect. Another very interesting question from Mohammed. How could the developing countries bridge the technology gap without necessarily going down the same path as developed countries, and why not lead the way on one or more specific areas?
areas. I don't know if the person is referring to technology or domains, but
yes, Mohamed, could you clarify maybe the question?
Yeah,
yes, technology.
Yeah, technology. Okay,
Yeah.
so I would start by of course, developing countries have many opportunities, because especially when we have a gap in terms of the way technology is adopted or embraced, you can at least have the benefit of having some lessons from the experience of other countries. I think it's not especially about developed versus developing countries, because we see some examples of developing countries that are better than other developed countries in using or adopting digital approaches, even by talking about a digital nation and having some very advanced approaches of technology. And we have seen that the period of COVID make many developing countries using drones, for example, for identifying or for advising people to respect the social distancing or the standards related to this period. But anyway, in general, of course, there is this opportunity of learning from maybe the mistakes of those who started adopting the technologies before. I think the other critical point or challenging point, I will come back to ethics, because they should keep in mind the importance of human control of this technology. And the idea, even if there is a sort of imitation or Me Too approach, is to be aware of the framework through which we can make a good usage of technology and AI in order not to have the same dangers maybe, or having the same type of risks or stakes related to the adoption of these devices or technologies in general.
Okay, thank you very much, Othman. I think we have addressed all the questions raised by our dear participants. If we haven't had any other question, then I think we should conclude today's webinar. Our very last question, how can ML be leveraged in the development sector?
The development sector.
How can ML be leveraged in the development sector?
What does the person mean by development sector? What is development?
What do you mean by development sector? It's Tanya. Tanya, could you clarify? Development. I mean, okay. NGO, humanitarian.
Okay.
Non-governmental organization. Is this right, Tanya? Yes, correct. NGO.
Okay. It starts to be used already, AI, like things related to location identification, for example, to make some aids reaching people that are in need in terms of health, helping, or even for food, or other specific situations where we had catastrophes. So technology and AI, through drones, through other technologies, managed to help many organizations to identify the location, geographical locations where these aids or help can be really reaching people in need. We have also some initiatives related to the identification of people in different parts of the world, and the way aids or the type of food or drugs, depending on the type of helping we are bringing, how it could be really used in terms of transport also. So using some networks and using machine learning also for facilitating the access of this helping aspects to populations that need this type of things.
Thank you very much, Othman. Well, we have come up to the end of this webinar. So just a few words to conclude. If maybe you could show the very last slide regarding our Global Executive MBA program, just to conclude. Well, if for those of you who would like to join our Global EMBA program that I just presented at the beginning of this presentation, please get on EMBA admission address, which is mentioned here, just to send your email, and our dear recruitment team with Kathleen and Virginie will be delighted to answer your questions. And if you would like to apply, you are most welcome. Just a few words regarding admission criteria. We are looking for participants with a bachelor's level or equivalent, at least 5 years of experience, professional experience, fluent in English, because all the courses, the classes are taught in English. And okay, we will be looking for an English test just to as an evidence of your English level. And well, I would like to thank you very much, together with Othman, for your participation today. I hope you enjoyed it, and we are looking forward to hearing from you soon. And also, we will keep in touch for our next webinars in the coming weeks and months, regarding management topics and marketing, finance, and so on, with maybe with Othman or with other professors from our faculty. So thank you very much, and have a nice day, and see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.